Welcome to the Authority File, the academic library podcast from Choice. Choice is a publishing division of the ACRL and the publisher of Choice Reviews and CC Advisor. This episode is brought to you by SAGE Publishing. I'm Bill Mickey, the host of the podcast and the editorial director at Choice, and for this 4-episode series, my guests and I discuss the evolving research workflow and the opportunities academic libraries have to embed themselves deeper within it. We'll also talk about how these integrations impact library services and the value they deliver back to the institution. In this first episode, our guests and I start off with an examination of trends, particularly how academic libraries are changing and how those changes impact skill sets, collection development, and institutional priorities, for example, and how all of this is setting the stage for new services and technology that better aligns with how research is being conducted. My guests include Richard Griscom, Associate University Librarian for Departmental Libraries at the University of Pennsylvania, Karen Phillips, Senior Vice President, Global Learning Resources and UK Editorial at SAGE Publishing, and Johan Tilstra, the founder and CEO of Main Library. Okay, so let's talk about how the academic library is evolving, particularly in the areas of content delivery, technology, and skill sets. Karen, what are some of the new priorities that are facing academic libraries these days?
So I would start by just saying that we've got a long history of working with the library on a shared mission of that we express as building bridges to knowledge. So we've both got this shared interest in within the institution, enabling kind of people to really kind of gain knowledge, be it from the student to the researcher. And so through our journals program, our books program, historically, we've really aimed to work in partnership with the library and understand kind of the changes that are going on in the higher education environment and for the library in particular. And so what I would say, even what seem as recent-ish changes have been going on for quite a while. So we've seen things like digitization of content, first journals, and then the books program, the reference program. And then we've really focused on more recent changes, which have been to build up new types of digital content. And so building programs of kind of new primary source archives, video collections, streaming video collections, and data products that are all about new types of materials that can best be delivered in a digital format. The more recent things that we're hearing from the library, and kind of we hear through our library advisory boards and through market research that we're kind of do on an ongoing basis, the kind of things that we're hearing about are the real need for technology and software to support the library to get their materials out on campus, in the institution, and also to be able to efficiently manage kind of the library resources and be a really good player within the higher education institution. And so kind of technology, software, it seems an absolutely key area for the library. And alongside that, new skills. So not just skills in developing print collections or even digital collections, but on really understanding usage, on really understanding kind of the way to link in with different kind of technology within the library, but also the kind of technology or the kind of areas that researchers and students themselves are using, so the software and actually kind of the workflows of the researcher and the student, so for the library to get in there. Yeah,
so it sounds like to sort of review what you've just said, it sounds like there was sort of an explosion of different content formats, resource formats, which libraries and publishers are all kind of engaging with, but there is evolving this sort of new infrastructure kind of support that's necessary to sort of manage all of that content collectively in sort of a, I guess, easily accessible manner or centralized function kind of thing. Is that sort of correct to assume?
Yep, very nicely put.
Okay, great. So Dick, I wanted to kind of pivot to you and see if this is making sense to you on sort of the front lines at your institution. Is that kind of what you're seeing happening?
Yeah, we've been watching this technology being developed to assist researchers with every step of the research process. And some of it is in use at Penn. For example, at the front end of the process, there's an electronic lab notebook platform that our campus Office of Research licenses. And at the tail end, we have professional profiling tools that generate metrics on research and grants, and altmetric tools that measure impact. So the library's been working with these. We feel that the library needs to be a player in offering these new services if we're going to continue to be relevant. I believe Rourke and Dempsey said workflow is the new content, and if we don't make an effort to support researcher workflow, vendors are going to do it for us by working directly with the schools and the departments and the labs. So we feel we really need to be a part of that.
Okay. So Karen, going back to you mentioned some new skill sets that are, and the new technology is sort of driving a need for new skill sets, maybe even new titles. At SAGE, as you look at what's going on at the library community, what are some of those new job skills or titles that library deans are looking for? Collection development, for example, is changing. What else do you see happening?
So the areas that come up when we're talking to librarians and research are actually kind of a shift from collections just being about collections development for largely researchers with a bit of reference for the students, to really thinking about both how the library can better support teaching and learning, supporting student success and affordability. And I think the ways to do that are fairly complicated. So that could be about relationships with faculty, but really understanding the technology that faculty are using, and that this where the students are. But then actually, just following on from what Dick was saying, the remaining relevant for the next in a digital age, and being there for the next generation of students and really understanding how they're using content. So the kind of, when I've been at conferences actually, the kind of roles that librarians have been talking about have been, we're not only recruiting people who have done postgraduates in librarianship, but actually data analysts or people with GIS skills or kind of more technical kind of analytical skills. So it's that seems to be one of the key areas. Okay.
And Dick, have you seen any specific changes at your library in that regard in terms of actually bringing in skills of this nature?
Yes, I think most libraries are looking at geospatial support, which really goes across the entire university, not just the sciences, but there's increased interest in mapping, for example, dates and places in humanities documents against a map. So there's really campus-wide interest in geospatial work. So that's an area we've been looking at.
Okay, so let's dig into this idea of the value that these new areas communicate back into the institution. I'm wondering if you can kind of define what that is a little bit more, and if it's not the library that would do this, who would end up doing it? I don't see like how this would go into any other department than the library, I suppose. But what give us a little bit more detail around that value proposition going forward for libraries, what the opportunity is. And Dick, we'll start with you.
Sure. I think traditionally the library does play a role on campus in supporting research and teaching. And if we don't support these needs of the campus, then the schools and departments are going to find their own solutions. They're going to be diverse solutions that they could be dealing with different vendors, different platforms. There's no unity to it. And I think the library provides that uniformity to it and cuts expenses for the campus by bringing it all together in one place.
Mm-hmm. Johan, what do you think? We want to jump in on this?
So my thoughts on this is, yeah, I think libraries are that institute that can make sure that that can take a very thorough look at the expenses, of course, of those tools. But I also think that libraries, in that sense, can offer what I've just recently seen described somewhere on Twitter as a safe space, making sure that the tools that are available are actually safe tools in the sense of also in the sense of privacy, of course. So that if you go to the library, that you can be sure that your usage data is not going to be monetized, but not just by outside vendors, but even by maybe your own professors, your own lecturers, so that you can actually behave in a very vulnerable, maybe even dumb way in the library. You can actually do that. You can go into the library, ask the librarian, and say, well, I have no idea, please help me out. And that safe space, I think that is a very important aspect of libraries.
Okay. I do want to make sure, though, that I want to go back to the value that libraries still place on collections and collection development, and make sure that doesn't get lost in the mix here, even as we sort of recognize that there are other opportunities in front of us. But one thing that's been bobbing around in my head for a little while now is this thing that you sort of touched on, how collections are changing. And I think about how libraries in some ways express their values through their purchasing. And one of the easiest examples here is with books, making sure a collection has books by and for people from underrepresented groups, for example. As the library's collection changes to, kind of what we've talked about, a more digital, software-driven sort of idea or ideal, how do you see those sorts of library values being expressed through the collection, not just through the acquisition of diverse digital books and journals, but through a more holistic view of a library's purchases?
I think it's a great question, and I think that in a print world where you literally would select book by book or journal by journal, the library was really put forward like a shop front. It really made the selection for their patrons to guide their patrons.
Right.
And I think in a more digital world, so journal collections are enormous. There's a huge amount of content, and I think there the trust has to be that the publisher and the publisher's brand of quality will mean that those collections represent good quality materials across a range of different areas. And then you've got your journal editors also ensuring that they're representing the discipline or the subdiscipline, and they're moving as research moves. So I think things are moving very much in that direction in terms of ebooks and e-reference. Librarians are buying much more packages of content. The role then of the library is to make sure that access to that content is absolutely key, or that you can see what usage there is of the different areas. So in terms of ebook collections, I think libraries are using less of their own sense of what will be used, but actually seeing what is used before they purchase. So getting through EBA and pay-per-view, just actually getting kind of access to materials to students and researchers, and then seeing what they use so that they can be informed, so they can use data to inform acquisitions as opposed to using knowledge to prejudge what's going to be used. So that to me means that the skill of the librarian is actually then kind of understanding what is being used, understanding what's being from the researchers, but also from a teaching point of view, so that you can then guide what your acquisitions are going to be, so that they're a good match. But actually, really importantly, making sure that access to those materials are key and clear, and that as much as you can, you're getting the right materials out to the student or the researcher when they need it.
Right, because without access, you can't really communicate that value, I suppose, right? So, Johan, anything you'd like to add there?
Yeah. So my my understanding of this topic has been greatly influenced by my my years at Utrecht University Library, of course, because I was not a librarian. I came in there with a completely different skill set, so I had to really dive in. And what I've seen is a diminishment of the identity of the library through their collections, and a shift that's still ongoing, I think, in terms of convenience for end users. So end users moving away from discovery services that really focus on that library collection, and then moving on to discovery tools like Google Scholar specifically, but also just regular Google discovery tools that do not focus on specifically what's available in your local library. And I think that's a very good thing, because doing research, you do not want to be limited by whatever your library has in its collection. You may miss out on an absolutely vital article or ebook or book that's just not within your library's collection, but that is available. And maybe it's not available directly through your library. Maybe your library doesn't have it in its collection right now. But there is still a role to be played by the librarian. The librarian should be able to tell the end user, all right, so we don't have this in our collection right now. But there are other ways of getting access. Help the end user out by simply telling them that they could maybe send the author in a short email, requesting a preprint, maybe letting the end user know that an ebook may be available through Interlibrary Loan or through some other methods. So there's more to be done by the librarian than simply providing access to the current collection. There's a big role to play, and I would also like to add that what I would like to see is that as many of those services are automated as well. I mean, it's helpful to tell the end user that yes, you might be able to, or you could send the author an email and request a copy. But what if we could automate that? What if the end user wouldn't have to go to the librarian and say, so how do I get access? And then the librarian have to answer or type out a question. What if we could automate that? So I'm all in favor of automating as many of those services, just to add to the convenience for the end user.
Okay, and then Dick, I definitely don't want to leave you out of this. So what is your point of view on this and reaction to what's just been said?
Well, our goal is to provide easy, seamless access to content, be it in electronic form or physical form. For example, looking at books and journals, we rely more and more on consortial collections. We're part of the Ivies Plus consortium, a consortium of 13 libraries. Penn has a very large, rich library collection, but we don't have everything. And we now consider our collection to include these 13 libraries, and we try to make that experience as seamless to users as possible. If someone needs a book that we don't have that's in one of these other library collections, we want to make it easy for them to find it and request it, and it will get here in 3 days. Mm-hmm. So one thing we're working on is developing a shared index of all the Ivies Plus schools and loading that index, that bibliographic data, into each of our catalogs, so it looks as though the collections of those 13 libraries are a part of the Penn collection. So that's one way we're getting at it for the print collection.
You just heard from Richard Griscom, Karen Phillips, and Johan Tilstra. This concludes the first of our 4-part series on how academic libraries can embed themselves deeper into the research workflow. This episode was brought to you by SAGE Publishing. Be sure to join us for the next episode, where we'll talk about the challenges of discovery, how discovery should morph into delivery, and the disconnects happening between changing user patterns and traditional services.
A lot of students, researchers actually will find library materials. They just don't know they are finding library materials, and they may not be finding them as efficiently as they should be.
Find all of the episodes of The Authority File on your favorite podcast app or on our website, choice360.org. Just click on the librarianship drop-down. On choice360.org, you'll also find information on Choice's entire product platform, including Choice Reviews, CC Advisor, Choice Webinars, resources for college libraries, our white papers, and a whole lot more. A great way to keep up with The Authority File is to join the Choice Authority File Facebook group, which you can access via the Choice Reviews Facebook page. As a member of the group, you can give us feedback, suggest podcast participants, chat with other listeners, and submit new topic ideas. Sponsorship and advertising for the Authority File podcast are handled by Choice's advertising manager, Pam Marino, and all of our episodes are produced by Choice's digital media specialist, Mark Dirks. That's all for this week. Thanks for joining us.